We were right, Paul. The HomePod
I
costs
don't.
too much money.
What does?
The HomePod. That's
Oh,
not where you thought this was going. That is.
nope. Okay, that's funny. I'll tell you this. We were just discussing this a little bit on
Mm,
Skype. I asked Mahedi if he'd write it up, and the thing that went through my head was, if they could give you two of these at this price, I would actually think about it.
yep. Yeah. For those who aren't aware, the HomePod, which originally cost, I believe, $349, is
Hmm.
now officially cut to $299 because Apple's
Right.
having a great year selling. Well,
Everything.
yeah.
Just
No,
everything.
you got to put it in perspective. They're still selling lots of stuff. Just
Less
their
of it than
insane growth appears to have peaked and is just
I should.
flatlined, which is not
Yeah,
a.
I should. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it's not a bad thing. I mean, they're still going to make tens of billions of dollars every quarter.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm sorry. You're right. They are. Whether it's a bad thing or not, I don't know. It's kind of a bad thing. I mean, they jacked up prices last year.
Mm-hmm.
The market responded. The story. I've seen this kind of creep out in places here and there. I've talked about this. I've not written it up formally, but starting around Black Friday last year,
Mm-hmm.
everything Apple sells has been on sale, and this is a company that never has sales.
Yep.
And the way that they've been doing it is secretly, right? All of a sudden, the price of their stuff on Amazon will drop, a bunch of it. I took advantage of this twice between November and I don't remember the date exactly, February, and it's ongoing. I bought an iPad, which at the time was the latest iPad, the 9.7-inch version, at a significant discount. I bought a refurbished iPhone 7. Now, I know you're thinking it's
Mm-hmm.
refurbished. It's at a significant, like they're always discounted. Yeah. But I don't remember the exact differential between the one on Amazon and the one you get from Apple, but it was 100 something dollars. It was 150 maybe. I wrote this somewhere. You can find that. But um, it's this is extended to all their products. And so Apple actually lowering the price of their HomePod on their website is a little unique
Mm-hmm.
because typically those products have been for sale elsewhere. And the HomePod has been among those products. Refurbished and new versions of HomePod have been on sale. Again, never advertised at other retailers, but now Apple's doing it directly from their site. They've dropped the price in China on the iPhone twice. This is a story today. They're doing this sale with the iPhone 10R in India as well. By the way, 25% discount, right?
That's a
So
big cut.
from roughly $1,111 down to $850. Significant price
Mm-hmm.
cut. So yeah, I mean they're feeling the pinch. And if you're interested in Apple products, this is good news because this stuff is suddenly a lot more affordable. Not affordable, but more affordable.
They should have bought Sonos. I think they would have done better. But
Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree. I was just in Costco the other day, and they have the Sonos. There's like a Sonos One and a Sonos Play One.
yep.
But again, I think it was. I hate saying things off the top of my head because I always get numbers wrong. But I want to say it was like two of them for $300, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, those are. I mean, you have
Mm-hmm.
we have them. They're fantastic speakers.
Yep. Well, you can get two of those or one HomePod.
Yeah. Well, $50 off is $50 off. I mean, that's still pretty good.
It's real money.
Again, if you're in the Apple ecosystem and that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
No judging. Just kidding. I'm judging you every day, but how could I not?
Well, what I'm going to be real curious to see is if they build any more speakers in that
Yeah.
ecosystem. Because,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
that was
Right.
kind of the idea was that, okay, they've got this one, then maybe they'll come up with a subwoofer, and they'll basically follow Sonos down that path.
Yep. A play bar type thing would be nice.
Mhm.
What do you call it? A sound bar.
Yep.
Yeah. Two smaller ones for stereo, like a little stereo pair would be good for like college dorm rooms.
Like a little
and,
thimble-looking
bedrooms.
thing. Like,
Yes. They could reuse the Mac Pro container.
there you go. That's a cost-cutting move
Yeah.
right there. Just
Mhm.
pull the old
This
guts
looks-
out. And
This looks familiar. What is this thing?
actually, they could probably turn that thing into a subwoofer, I bet.
Yeah. Or a trash basket.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And then obviously the other big thing happening today is Microsoft is, I believe, for the third time, I think it's third time, making servicing changes to Windows 10, which I think we haven't talked about this formally, but I think we're both in agreement that this has got to be they're heading the right way.
You cannot overstate how huge this is. I have been. I feel like again. I'm not to pat myself on the back here, but I no. But seriously, I've been on the forefront of this since 2015. That this Windows as a service thing that they're doing is bad for customers, and I get why they. I understand the point of it, keeping everyone up to date, but it has been a disaster. And last year was the worst example of that, with all the terrible stuff that happened with the 2 feature updates we got last year. But all along the line, Windows Home updates have no way to defer updates without doing crappy workarounds that actually leaves their machines vulnerable. I've never understood this mentality, and I'll let you describe what they're doing. But I mean, the compromise that they're making here is exactly the kind of compromise I used to ask Terry to make all throughout Windows 10. So, for example, with the store, Chrome's never going to be in the store because we don't allow, desktop, blah, blah, blah. It's like, get Chrome in the store. Just, you have this arbitrary rule that you invented, you can circumvent it. Just stop doing that. You're hurting people.
The funny thing is they could actually get Chromium, their own browser, into the store, but they're not.
Right. That's kind of goofy, actually. Okay. So that's interesting. But anyway, with regards to Windows Update, I think they have, it's early yet. I mean, and my God, the announcement is rather long and complex, but I believe that they have not done exactly what I asked for. I would say they have made a compromise that is fully acceptable, is exactly right, and is good for customers.
Yeah, and at a high level, here's what they are letting you now do. Feature update. Well, first off, taking a step back, the update that is coming, what we know as 1903 or 19H1, is going to be called the May 2019 Windows 10 update. Words might be flipped around a little bit, whatever. It's coming in May, and if that sounds crazy, you're not off. What they're going to do is they're going to put this release into the release preview ring and then just let it sit until the end of May, and then they're going to push it out to on a rolling basis to other people.
As you announce these little bits, I just want to interject something real quick because this is a super important point. With 2 things to what you just said. You notice they were calling it 19H1, right? 1903 is still kind of in the version number because it has to be a number.
Yeah.
But there's a reason they went H1, H2, right? And this is the reason. It's not coming out in April. Okay. That release preview bit you just mentioned is fascinating to me because one of the things that sunk the previous release, 1809, was that it never went into release preview. Remember they announced it all of a sudden at that Surface event? In doing that, they literally bypassed the most crucial final phase of development of the product just to get it out on some arbitrary day. And then they had to pull it back because there were all these problems. And so this is clearly a response to that. There is no reason not to do this. This is like the advice you give to people if they can defer updates. Say, look, defer all updates by 30 days. It doesn't hurt you. And if there's a problem, it will be found out in the world, and then it will be fixed before you have to install it and have problems. Now Microsoft's doing that, right? They're doing it for you. They're essentially deferring this update by about 30 days.
Yep.
They're literally going to let it stew. Smart.
Yep. Then the other thing, which I am very excited about because this machine that I'm on right now will absolutely get this feature by me manually. You are now going to be able to defer feature updates all the way up until the current version your machine is running reaches its end of life cycle. So in theory, if you do it right on day one, you could not have to install another feature update for up to 18 months. Which is great because now you can control when your machine gets a feature update. They're no longer going to force it on your machine unless you're in the scenario where the version you're on is going to no longer receive updates, then they will make you upgrade. But you are now in control of when those updates get on your machine, which is finally happening, which is about time. That is the big one for me, that I can control when certain machines upgrade.
I have a hard time keeping this in my head. There's so much there right now with this because this has been a central huge issue for me all along. Couple of things, the 3 things, if I can get through them. Windows Home users never had a way to defer updates, like I said. Now they do. I noticed this back in, February, March, because the machine, it might be this machine, whatever machine I was using, was on Windows 10 Home. And I said, this is interesting. It has the same defer capabilities as Windows 10 Home all of a sudden. But in 7-day chunks, right? It was like you can pause update for 7 days. And so I wrote an article about that. And I kept checking, maybe something was getting screwed up. And the announcement is that you can do it in 7-day quality updates, up to 35 days in 7-day chunks. And so you can defer it 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. So, it's not perfect. I get it. But my God, is this a huge improvement over the previous system? I said there were 3 things, and I've literally already forgotten the other 2. Because again, it's like an explosion of, oh my God, they're finally doing right by people. Like, this is so amazing. Oh geez. I'm sorry. This is like literally fog of war stuff for me. I don't know what to equate this to. It's like you spend years begging someone to do the right thing, and they're like, no. It's worse than no. They're like, no, not only are we not going to do the right thing, what you're saying is wrong. We are doing the right thing. And all our data shows that everything is fine and you're wrong. And then one day you go through this for 4 years. And then one day all of a sudden they're like, yep. You're like, wait, what? What did you just say? You said yes. You're gonna what? So to the feature update thing, amazing. Feature updates are version upgrades. They're huge. It's like going from Windows 7 to Windows 8 every time. They do 2 of those a year. You can defer those, and like you said, skip through them. This is the third one. There is still some confusion here. I don't believe it's addressed in today's announcement. This is something that's come up again and again, and that is this notion of when your PC is reaching end of support, because there is no firm date on that for any given PC, right? There was an incident in, I want to say 2017 maybe, where a certain class of Intel Celeron processors, or maybe they're Atom processors, suddenly were not going to be supported on the next version of Windows that was coming out at the time, Windows 10. And this created this sudden spaz attack for this group of people who have those products and wanted to upgrade to the latest version and suddenly couldn't, even though it had been working during the Insider program. And that's unfortunately the vague gray area of the whole updating process, this notion of end of support, because in the old days, it was really clear cut. Windows is supported for 10 years, 5 years of mainstream support, 5 years of extended. Now it's actually dependent on your hardware. And you can't know looking at, if I look at the device manager and here's the hardware components I have in my computer, it's possible that there's an Intel chipset that, I don't know, 2.5 years from now or something, will no longer be supported for some coming version of Windows 10. And that's when my end of support happens, right? And at that point, what Microsoft is going to do is go back to the classic version of Windows as a service, as I'll call it now, the classic version, and just force feed you those updates, right? Because you'll lose the ability to defer updates.
Yep. Yeah, that is the one sticking point here, is because we don't have those traditional cycles, as you pointed out. Your hardware eventually will no longer be supported. We just don't know.
Yeah, it could happen anytime. I mean, I think I keep mentioning the example of Meltdown and Spectre was an unexpected trigger for that kind of a thing, right? Suddenly we have a class of Intel processor chipsets that may not be supported going forward on certain versions of Windows, right? Because it just the work to do that is too difficult or impossible, whatever. And that may trigger some kind of an end of support scenario as well. So it's a weird thing. It's very hard to explain. I'm not even sure I fully understand it, to be honest, but it's just something. Microsoft talks a lot about the end of support without explaining when that might happen, because they don't know.
And then the other big thing that you can now do is you can defer security patches up to 35 days. So I believe you can do it in 7-day chunks.
That's right.
And up to 35 days. So basically the news of the day is you can defer any and all updates for a certain amount of time, depending on what it is.
Yeah, now that they've given us a mile when I was asking for an inch, I'd like to ask for an inch further. And that further inch is for non-0 days. I think you should be able to, in one whack, say 35 days, right? And because my advice to people, if they, back in the day, meaning before today, if they were on Windows 10 Home or higher, Windows 10 Pro or higher, just to be prudent, honestly, deferring a month is probably the smart way to go. So you're always kind of like a month behind on the quality updates, because there have been tons of problems with them, right? They've had to pull them back, reissue them. You don't want to get caught up in that. And so obviously with security, it's kind of a tough call. You want your machine to be updated. You want to be secure. I get it. But I think you need to balance, and this is actually like Mike Fortin says it at the top of the post, is this balance between Microsoft's desire to keep their systems up to date and a user's desire to not be inconvenienced, multiple times a month, which is perfectly reasonable. Anyway, I'd like to see you can set the day, 35 days.
The only other thing, since we're asking for things, Microsoft, I'm still in favor of just one update per year, but that's me personally.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I being an occasionally reasonable person, I would accept a compromise where there was a formal plan where maybe the H2 release was kind of a minor deal and the H1 was the big one, or whatever. But yes, those updates are upgrades and they are disruptive. And to give Microsoft some credit, they've done a decent job. If the compatibility is there and the reliability is there, a lot of the install happens while you're using the computer behind the scenes. You don't realize it's going on. And when you do finally get prompted to reboot, 3-4 years ago, that reboot was an hour, 45 minutes maybe. Today, it's about 7 minutes. It's really quick. But that don't confuse that with the enormity of the thing that's happening to your computer. And the chance for something bad happening with that kind of an update is very high compared to a quality update. We have tons of quality update problems too.
Yep. So lots of fun stuff happening on the Windows side.
This is big news. This
really is.
We've already had a couple of items this year where I've been like, man, this is like, this is big. And this is big. And I would, honestly, maybe I could go find a list that I've made. But I mean, when you think about the top level problems with Windows 10, the things that keep it from being the excellent platform that it otherwise is, this is number one with a bullet, right? Number one. Because you can talk about advertising and crapware bundling, and that stuff is terrible. But this impacts everybody. I've heard from tons of people, Mary Jo talks like this, who don't even see the advertising that's in there and don't, the fact that there's crapware in the start menu doesn't bother them, and so they don't really see it. And I completely get that. But this stuff, the update stuff, this impacts everybody. It doesn't matter if you're an enthusiast or a programmer or a gamer or just a casual user. We've all experienced that thing where it's like, Windows needs to update. Do you want to do it now or do you want to do it later? And in the past, you would wake up and it would have updated. You could have lost data. If you had a poorly written application that didn't know how to save state as the thing was shutting down, you could lose stuff. And you did. People did. It's a serious problem. So it's huge. Yeah, cannot overstate how huge this is.
Yep. And so look for the May update to arrive, in May, unless you're on release preview, in which case it'll arrive next week.
By the way, there's probably nobody in release preview anymore, right?
It's I know that's the thing, is how big is that pool? Yeah.
Well, but the fact that they're making this change may inspire some people to try that, right? I mean, it's this is the last stand now, I guess, for these updates, for the feature updates, right? And like I said, keeping that thing, what they're doing, Mary Jo coined the phrase guinea pigs to describe Windows 10 home users because this thing would explode out to them and it would go good or bad or whatever. And they were the ones that had to endure it because they didn't have any way to stop it. And so if there was a problem, it would get fixed. And by the time the people who were deferring updates came along, everything was fine. Well, now they're moving that where it belongs into the actual beta process, right? Or what we call the insider program now. And it's sitting there. I think is going to have, I think it's exactly right. You want to catch the problem then, not when it goes out broadly to normal human beings. It's smart. I think.
You got anything else for today, Paul? Not that there's anything else going on, but
there's nothing else going on except that I'm going to Washington D.C. today, and so I'm going to be out for a good chunk of the day. I'm still going to do short takes and ask Paul. Nope. Brad's like, "You're done, buddy." So I'll be working in the morning, and then I'll be in D.C. tomorrow afternoon, and then we come home on Saturday. But I'll be offline, I think, for a good chunk of the day.
you be around for the podcast tomorrow, I guess is the...
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. And yeah, I'll be doing the podcast tomorrow. Sure. And I don't know if that will take the form of me out in the world with a phone or me in the hotel with a computer, but yes, I'll do First Ring tomorrow as well.
Gotcha. Well, folks, on that note, that means First Ring Daily is happening tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern. And you can find all that on the YouTube channel, on Thrat.com, or wherever else you find us. Have yourselves a wonderful Thursday.